I don't even know where to begin. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, let alone putting it out into the world for people to read. But if you're reading this, then I guess it's already too late. I need to tell someone what happened, and I need to get it off my chest before I go crazy. Maybe, just maybe, you'll understand what I've been going through. It all started with a text. And let me tell you, if I'd known that text would turn my life upside down, I never would have read it. It was a typical Tuesday evening. Nothing special, nothing out of the ordinary. I was sitting on my couch, mindlessly scrolling through my phone while the TV buzzed in the background. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just passing time, waiting for the day to end. My phone buzzed, and I glanced down at it without thinking much of it. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize. Hey, you don't know me, but I know a lot about you. And I think it's time you knew a little about me. Let's see if you're brave enough to meet me tonight. You'll find the details in the next text. I hope you're ready. At first, I thought it was some sort of prank. Maybe a friend messing with me, or some weird scam. I almost deleted it right away. But something stopped me. I don't know if it was curiosity or just a gut feeling, but I opened the next message. The place is Parkside at 9 p.m. Come alone. Don't bring anyone. I'll be watching. It was short, simple, but for some reason, it made my heart race. There was something chilling about it. A part of me wanted to just ignore it, delete it, and move on. But another part, something darker, more curious, urged me to go. The idea of someone knowing so much about me, someone out there watching me, that sense of power they had over me, made me feel like I had to know more. But I wasn't stupid. I wasn't going to just show up without thinking it through. I sat there for a few minutes, contemplating my options. I could call the police. I could tell someone. But who would believe me? Who would believe that a stranger had messaged me, offering no explanation, no reason? And, honestly, would I even be able to explain it? I didn't know how to explain it to myself. So I decided to go. I don't know why. Maybe I was hoping for an answer. Maybe I just wanted to know who was behind this weird, cryptic message. I left my apartment a little after 8:30, driving slowly to the location. The place was an old park on the outskirts of town. It wasn't particularly famous, just a quiet park with a few benches, some walking paths, and a small pond. It was the kind of place you went when you wanted to be left alone. When I arrived, the park was empty. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting long, eerie shadows across the walkway. The wind rustled the leaves, but other than that, it was silent. There was no one in sight. For a moment, I wondered if this was all just some weird joke. Maybe someone was going to jump out and laugh at me. I almost turned around and left. But then, I saw her. At first, I thought it was just another person walking through the park. A woman, dressed in black, standing by the pond with her back to me. But something about her was off. She stood perfectly still, not moving a muscle. The way she was positioned, so far from the entrance, with no other lights around, gave me an odd feeling. I could barely see her face, but I could tell she wasn't looking at me. The hairs on my neck stood up. I took a few cautious steps forward, trying to be as quiet as possible. The woman didn't seem to notice me. As I got closer, I noticed something even stranger. There was a chair beside her. Not a bench, but a single chair, placed on the ground. She hadn't brought it with her. It was placed there specifically for a reason. I stopped walking and just stared at her. She still didn't move. My heart pounded in my chest. Finally, I cleared my throat, unsure of what to say. "Hey, are you?" Before I could finish my sentence, she turned around. The sight of her face made me freeze. Her expression was blank. No anger, no fear, no anything. Just emptiness. But her eyes were wide, almost unnatural. There was something behind them, something I couldn't place. And then she spoke. "You're here." That was it. 3 words. Simple, but the way she said it sent a shiver down my spine. I got your message," I stammered, trying to make sense of what was happening. She nodded slowly, almost like she was studying me. "I know. You're just like the others." The others? My mind raced. But before I could ask what she meant, she reached into the pocket of her jacket and pulled out a small, black object. She held it out to me, and I instinctively took it. It was a phone, the same model as mine, but older. The screen was cracked. "You'll need this," she said, her voice low, almost hypnotic. "You have 24 hours to figure this out. Don't make the same mistake they did." I wanted to drop it, walk away, and pretend this never happened. But something about her words, the weight of the situation, kept me rooted to the spot. I stared at her, confused. What do you mean? Who are you? But she didn't answer. She just turned and began walking away, disappearing into the darkness. And that was when I knew my life was about to change forever. I looked down at the phone in my hand, feeling the cold metal press against my palm. And as I did, I felt it, an unsettling sensation deep in my gut. I didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. I stood there in the dark, holding the broken phone, my fingers trembling. The woman, whoever she was, had vanished into the shadows like she was never even there. My mind was racing. What had just happened? Who was she? And why had she left me with this phone? I looked at the screen. It was cracked, but still functional. There were no texts or calls, just one notification, one new message. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't touched the phone since I'd picked it up, so how could there be a message? I tapped the screen to open it, and the message appeared. I hope you're ready for what's coming next. Time is ticking. Go to the old library. 10 p.m. Don't be late. I felt a chill run through me. I didn't know what to make of this. The library? The old one on Maple Street. That place had been closed for years. No one went there anymore. It was a relic from another time, full of dust and forgotten books. There was no reason for anyone to be there, not at this hour. I looked around the park, half expecting someone to jump out at me, but it was just as empty as before. I stuffed the phone into my pocket, turned on my heel, and started walking to my car. As I drove to the library, my mind kept running through all the possibilities. Was this some kind of twisted game? Or was I being stalked by some stranger who knew way too much about me? Every inch of my body was telling me to turn back, but curiosity, the same thing that had gotten me into this mess, kept me going. I parked in front of the library at exactly 9:58. The building loomed in the dim streetlights, casting long shadows across the ground. It looked deserted, eerie even, like it had been abandoned for years. But I could see a faint light flickering in one of the windows, as though someone was inside. I didn't know what I was expecting, but it certainly wasn't this. I hesitated at the door. The message had said, "Don't be late," but for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted to follow the instructions. There was something about the whole situation that felt wrong, like I was being led into a trap. But again, that damn curiosity pushed me forward. I pulled open the heavy door, the old hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the library was even darker than I expected. The faint glow from a single desk lamp illuminated a small corner of the room. The shelves of books towered over me, their spines gathering dust, untouched for years. I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing in the silence. My heart was pounding in my chest as I scanned the room. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The place was as empty as it always had been. But then I heard it. A soft noise from somewhere deeper in the building. A rustling, like paper or fabric brushing against something. It wasn't just the wind, someone was here. I froze, every instinct telling me to leave, but I couldn't. Not now. Not when I was so close. I took a deep breath and began moving toward the sound, my footsteps slow and deliberate. The closer I got, the clearer the noise became. Someone was flipping through books, one after another. The sound was almost hypnotic. I rounded a corner, and there, at the far end of the library, was a figure standing by one of the shelves. It was a woman, her back to me. She was wearing a long coat, her hair cascading down her back. She wasn't looking at me, but I could feel her presence, like she knew I was there. Before I could say anything, she spoke, her voice soft but clear. "You came." I didn't know what to say. The words caught in my throat. She turned slowly, her face illuminated by the flickering lamp light. I recognized her immediately. It was the same woman from the park, the one who had handed me the phone. "How did you?" I started, but she raised a hand, silencing me. "I told you I'd be watching," she said. Her eyes were cold, calculating. "Now it's time for you to play." My heart was racing. This couldn't be happening. I had to get out of there. But I was rooted to the spot. "Play," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. She smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something I didn't, someone who had the upper hand. "You've already started," she said, her voice tinged with amusement. "The game is in motion now. You can't back out. Not now." I didn't understand what she meant, but before I could ask more, she turned and gestured to a small table beside her. On it, there was a stack of papers, a pen, and what looked like a contract. "You'll need to sign this," she said, her tone serious now. "It's part of the rules." My stomach turned. "A contract?" What kind of game was this? I stepped closer, my mind racing, and looked at the papers. The first line was simple, almost too simple. By signing this, you agree to participate in the game and all its consequences. There was no way I could sign this. No way. But somehow, I knew she wasn't giving me a choice. If I didn't, I was pretty sure something far worse would happen. I'm not signing this, I said, my voice steady despite the rising panic. She raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a knowing smile. You don't have to, she replied. The game has already begun. You've already made your first move. I didn't understand. I hadn't made any choice that night, not in the way she meant. But then, in that moment, I realized something. I was in too deep, and there was no turning back. I stood frozen, staring at the piece of paper in front of me. The words on it didn't make sense. How could anyone expect me to sign something like this? Agree to the game and its consequences, it said. What did that even mean? Was this some kind of sick joke, or had I stumbled into something far more dangerous? I glanced at the woman. At least, I thought she was a woman. Her expression was calm, almost amused, like she knew something I didn't. She didn't say a word, just watched me with those piercing eyes. I can't sign this, I said, trying to steady my breath. This doesn't make sense. She didn't reply immediately, just stepped back slightly, allowing me to take in the room. The place felt colder now, the air thick with an unsettling silence. I wanted to leave. I should leave. But every part of me knew that if I walked out of this library, if I ran, I would only make things worse. You don't have to sign, she said, her voice soft, almost soothing. But you've already taken the first step. The first choice. I felt my pulse quicken. The first choice? What was she talking about? I hadn't made any choice. I hadn't agreed to anything. This was all happening to me. Everything has consequences, she added, her smile never fading. You've already chosen to be here. And there's no going back now. I didn't know what to say. The whole thing was a nightmare, but I couldn't wake up. I looked down at the contract again. The words were still the same, but now, they felt like they were suffocating me. Why me? I finally managed to ask, my voice shaking. She stepped closer, her presence overwhelming, and looked at me with an almost pitying gaze. Why not you? She replied. Everyone has their role to play. It didn't make any sense. Why would she want me involved in whatever twisted game she was playing? I hadn't done anything to deserve this. I wasn't some hero or villain in a story. I was just a guy trying to get through his day. I turned my gaze back to the contract. There was a weight to it now, like it was more than just paper and ink. It was an anchor, pulling me deeper into whatever this was. Please, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to do this. I just want to leave. Her eyes softened, but only for a moment. Then, just as quickly, her expression turned cold again. Leaving isn't an option, she said. The game has already begun. You can't walk away now. A chill ran down my spine. I could feel the panic rising in my chest, threatening to overtake me. But before I could speak again, she reached for something behind her. It was a small, wooden box, old, worn, like it had been sitting there for decades. She placed it on the table in front of me and opened it. Inside were two things, a key and another piece of paper. The key was small, plain, but it felt significant. And the paper? It was another set of instructions, just like the message I'd received earlier. You'll need this, she said, nodding toward the key. You're going to need it to unlock the next step. I stared at the key. Unlock what? I asked, my voice rising in frustration. She didn't answer. She simply slid the paper toward me. It was folded neatly, and as I opened it, the first thing I saw were more cryptic words. Follow the key, and the path will reveal itself. But be warned, not every door is meant to be opened. My breath caught in my throat. What the hell was I reading? Was this some kind of riddle? Some twisted game? You have a choice now, she said, her voice calm as ever. Take the key and find out what happens next. Or leave it and walk away. But remember, you can't go back once you've started. I felt like I was suffocating. Every part of me screamed to just turn and run, but I couldn't. There was something about this, something deep inside me, that was telling me I had to know the truth. I reached for the key, and that was when everything changed. The moment my fingers wrapped around the key, something shifted in the air. It wasn't a sound, but a feeling. Like the world around me had subtly changed, and I was now standing at the edge of something I couldn't fully comprehend. The woman, still watching me, didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The silence in the room was deafening, But somehow, it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt inevitable. I stared at the key in my hand. It was small, old, and unremarkable, yet it felt heavier than it should. It was almost as if it carried the weight of something far greater than its size. I didn't know what it unlocked or where it would lead, but I knew I couldn't walk away. Not now. I looked up at the woman. What do I do now? She didn't answer right away, but her gaze softened, just slightly, before she pointed toward the back of the library. The door, she said simply. I turned in the direction she was pointing, my heart hammering in my chest. There, at the far end of the room, was a door I hadn't noticed before. It was small, tucked away behind one of the shelves, almost like it was trying to hide itself from view. The wood was dark, weathered, and the doorframe was nearly hidden in shadows. I took a step toward it, my footsteps echoing in the stillness of the library. The closer I got, the more the air seemed to press down on me. It was like the walls themselves were closing in, urging me to stop, to turn around. But I couldn't. The key in my hand felt like it was pulling me forward. When I reached the door, I paused, my hand hovering over the knob. The woman's voice broke through my thoughts. "Remember," she said, her tone grave. "Not every door is meant to be opened." I swallowed hard. What was she warning me about? What could possibly be behind this door? I turned the key in the lock, and the door creaked open with a groan. It was like something had been waiting for this moment, as if the world itself had been holding its breath. I stepped through, and the moment my foot crossed the threshold, everything changed. The air was different. It was colder, thicker, as though the space beyond the door existed in a place apart from the rest of the world. The room I entered was dimly lit, its walls lined with old paintings of people I didn't recognize, their eyes seemingly following my every move. The floor was covered in dust, untouched, as if no one had been here in years. Or decades. I looked around, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, but it was as if I had entered another world altogether. Then I heard it. A faint whisper, barely audible, coming from the far corner of the room. It sounded like my name. Darren. My heart skipped a beat. I froze. There was no one in the room with me. No one except for the paintings, staring down from their frames. I turned toward the sound, my pulse racing. "Darren, you're not supposed to be here." I couldn't tell where the voice was coming from, but it was unmistakable. It was familiar, as though I had heard it before. A chill ran down my spine. Was this part of the game? Or was something else going on? Something far more sinister? I took a step back, my mind spinning. The door behind me slammed shut on its own, locking with a loud, final click. I was trapped. The voice came again, this time louder, more urgent. "You don't belong here, Darren. Leave. Now." I wanted to turn around, to escape, but my feet wouldn't move. It was like some invisible force had rooted me to the spot. The paintings seemed to grow darker, the faces in them warping, distorting. "Leave this place," the voice commanded. But I didn't. I couldn't. The curiosity, no, the need to understand what was happening, kept me rooted in place. I couldn't leave now. Not when I was so close. I took a deep breath and moved forward, toward the center of the room where a small pedestal stood. On top of it was an old, leather-bound book. It was thick, worn with age, and there was something about it that drew me in. As I reached out to touch it, the air grew colder. The whispers intensified, becoming more frantic. "No," the voice hissed. "Don't open it." But it was too late. My fingers brushed the cover, and the book fell open on its own. The pages were yellowed with age, the words written in a language I couldn't understand. And then the room went silent. Everything around me stopped. The whispers, the feeling of being watched, the unease, all of it vanished in an instant. For a brief moment, I felt a strange peace, as though the world had paused, holding its breath. But it was only a moment. The ground beneath me began to shake, a low rumble echoing through the room. The paintings on the walls twisted and contorted, their eyes now wide with horror. The book in my hands began to glow, faintly at first, but then brighter and brighter, until the light was blinding. And that was when I knew. Whatever I had opened, whatever I had unleashed, I couldn't stop it now. The game had only just begun. The book glowed with an unnatural intensity, its pages flickering like fire. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at it, unable to look away. The room felt alive now, the air thick with an unseen energy. The paintings on the walls were no longer just hanging. They were watching, their eyes following every slight movement I made. I felt a coldness creep up my spine, a feeling like someone was standing right behind me. But when I turned around, no one was there. Just the flickering light from the book and the oppressive silence. My fingers trembled as I turned the next page. The text on the pages was in a language I couldn't understand. It wasn't anything like I'd ever seen before. Symbols, strange shapes that seemed to move as I looked at them. Some letters shifted, others faded in and out of existence. My breath hitched as I realized something. It wasn't just written text. It was alive. It was changing, responding to my presence. Then, as I stared at the symbols, one of them began to glow brighter than the others. It wasn't just glowing, it pulled me in. My fingers hovered over the page, drawn to it as if the book was reaching out to me. I couldn't stop myself. Something inside me screamed that I should close the book, run, do anything but stay here. But I couldn't. The glowing symbol shifted again, forming a word. One word. Choose. I blinked, rubbing my eyes in disbelief. The page wasn't just glowing anymore, it was burning. The word choose was scrawled across the page in flames. The heat radiated from it, but I couldn't look away. Suddenly, the whispers returned, louder now. The voice was no longer just a distant echo, it was all around me, inside my head, demanding my attention. You must choose. The game doesn't stop until you do. The voice whispered, almost pleading. Choose. What the hell did I have to choose? There was nothing in the room but the book, the paintings, and the oppressive darkness. I snapped the book shut, but the light didn't fade. The book still pulsed in my hands, as if alive, as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for my decision. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, like they were urging me to make a move. My heart raced in my chest as I looked around. I had to get out, but the door I had entered through was now gone, replaced with a wall. The only exit was the small door at the far end of the room, but something told me it wouldn't be that simple. Choose, the voice demanded again, or face the consequences. I took a step back, trying to steady my breath. There was no going back. I knew that now. Whatever had started when I picked up the key wasn't something I could undo. I turned the book over in my hands, looking for some kind of clue, some sign. And that's when I noticed it. On the back cover, etched into the leather, was a symbol. The same symbol that had glowed on the page. Without thinking, I pressed my hand to it. The world around me shifted instantly. The room seemed to dissolve into nothingness. The floor, the walls, the ceiling, they all vanished, replaced by a swirling vortex of color and light. My stomach lurched as if I were falling, spiraling into the unknown. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My heart pounded in my chest, the noise in my head deafening. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. I was no longer in the library. I was somewhere else. Somewhere different. The ground beneath me was soft, like sand, but it wasn't sand. It was a strange, shifting surface that seemed to pulse beneath my feet. The sky above me was dark, but streaked with an eerie, unnatural light. I could barely see anything, but I felt the presence of something around me, just out of sight. A low hum filled the air, and the ground vibrated beneath me. I couldn't tell if it was real or if I was losing my mind. The air smelled of something metallic, something wrong. And that's when I realized I wasn't alone. I wasn't alone at all. I stood still, my breath catching in my throat. The world around me was warped, like I had stepped into another dimension. The ground shifted beneath my feet, and the eerie hum in the air grew louder, vibrating through my body. I tried to move, to find some sense of direction, but everything felt off. The strange sand beneath me felt like it was alive, pulsating in time with the hum, like it had a mind of its own. I looked around, but there was no sign of anything familiar. No landmarks. No sky like I knew it. Just an endless stretch of dark space, with swirling lights casting shadows that danced unnaturally across the ground. And then I saw it. A figure in the distance, barely visible at first, standing still in the shadows. It was tall, almost impossibly so, and its outline was distorted, like it wasn't fully part of the world around it. I couldn't see its face, just the silhouette of its shape, long limbs reaching toward the sky. My heart pounded, and the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. Every instinct in me screamed to run, to flee from whatever that thing was. But my legs wouldn't move. It was like I was rooted to the spot, my body betraying me. The figure didn't move, at least not at first. It just stood there, watching, waiting. Who are you? I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible, swallowed up by the strange hum in the air. No response, just silence. And then, the air shifted again. The figure stepped forward, its movement slow and deliberate, as if it knew I couldn't escape. As it drew closer, the shadows around it seemed to stretch, twisting like they were part of it, alive and hungry. I wanted to look away, to turn and run, but I couldn't. The closer it got, the more I felt its presence, an oppressive weight that pushed down on me, suffocating me. When it was only a few feet away, I finally caught a glimpse of its face, or at least, what could be considered a face. It wasn't human. Not entirely. The features were contorted, like a mask that had been molded out of darkness. Hollow, empty eyes stared at me, and there was a smile, a twisted, jagged grin that didn't belong to anything living. Do you understand now? The figure spoke, its voice a low rasp that sent chills down my spine. It wasn't just in my ears. It felt like the words were seeping into my skin, crawling through my veins. I shook my head, my mind reeling. Understand what? What is this place? Why am I here? The figure tilted its head, its smile widening unnaturally. You have been chosen, it said, each word deliberate and heavy with meaning. The game has chosen you. But now, the real test begins. I could barely process what it was saying. Chosen? What did that even mean? This wasn't a game. This wasn't anything I had asked for. You're not real. I stammered, my voice breaking as panic began to set in. The figure's grin faded, replaced by something darker, something more sinister. Oh, I'm real, it said, its voice now a low growl. More real than you could ever understand. It stepped closer, and I could feel its presence pressing in on me. My heart raced, my hands trembling as I took a step back, only to find the ground shifting beneath me. I was trapped. You can't run, it whispered, its voice almost soothing now. You can't escape. Not from the game. Not from what's already begun. I could feel my legs giving out, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I was suffocating under the weight of its words, under the weight of this place, this thing. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the figure was gone. Disappeared into the shadows as if it had never existed. I stood alone in the dark, the hum still vibrating in the air, the ground still shifting beneath my feet. The silence was deafening, but I wasn't alone. I felt its presence in the shadows, lingering, watching, and I knew, in that moment, that I hadn't escaped anything. This was only the beginning. I stumbled back, my heart pounding wildly in my chest. The figure had vanished, but its presence still clung to the air. I could feel it, like a shadow lurking just out of sight, watching me. The hum in the air hadn't stopped, but now it felt different. It wasn't just a sound. It was a feeling, vibrating deep within me, like I was attuned to some hidden frequency I wasn't meant to hear. I couldn't stay here. I had to keep moving. But where? There was no clear path, no guide. The ground shifted beneath my feet again, and I felt like I was walking on something unstable, as if the world itself was crumbling around me. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A faint glow in the distance. At first, I thought it was a mirage, just a trick of the light, an illusion of hope. But as I turned toward it, I knew it was real. There was a path ahead of me, illuminated by a faint, eerie glow. It seemed to lead into the darkness, but it was the only thing that made sense in this twisted place. I took a deep breath and forced myself to move forward, my legs heavy, each step dragging me deeper into the unknown. As I walked, the air grew colder, the shadows stretching and warping around me. It felt like the path was shifting, guiding me somewhere. But where? The glow from ahead grew brighter the closer I got. It wasn't a light exactly. It was like the darkness itself was glowing, pulling me in. The closer I got, the more I could hear. A faint whisper, barely audible, like a chorus of voices just out of reach. Come. The voices seemed to beckon. Follow. I couldn't stop myself. I had to follow. Every fiber of my being urged me to keep moving, to reach that light, to find out what lay at the end of the path. And then, just as I reached the end of the path, the glow disappeared. I stopped short, my breath catching in my throat. The path had led me to a door, a massive, ancient door carved with strange symbols. It looked out of place, like it didn't belong in this world. The symbols on the door pulsed, glowing faintly, as if alive. I reached out, my fingers brushing the cold surface of the door. It felt like a warning, a barrier, but I had no choice. I had come this far. Without thinking, I pushed against the door. It creaked open slowly, the air around me shifting as it did. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, like they were right next to me, calling me forward. I stepped through, and the moment I did, I felt it, a shift, a weight, as if something had changed. The room I entered was vast, endless, stretching far beyond what I could see. The walls were made of stone, rough and uneven, covered in more of those strange symbols. The ceiling was high, lost in shadow, and the air felt thick, like it was pressing down on me. In the center of the room was a pedestal, bathed in a sickly green light. On it lay an object, covered by a cloth. The glow seemed to come from it, pulsing rhythmically, as if it was alive. My heart raced. This was it. This was what I had been led here for. But as I took a step forward, the room shifted again. The walls began to close in, the floor beneath me creaking as if the very building was alive, responding to my presence. The whispers, now deafening, came from all directions. "Take it," they urged. "It's your choice." I wanted to turn back. I wanted to leave. But the pull toward that pedestal, toward whatever lay under that cloth, was too strong. I had no choice. I stepped forward. My hand trembled as I reached for the cloth on the pedestal. The whispers were deafening now, filling the room with a cacophony of voices. Some of them were familiar, as if they were calling my name. Others were distant and cold, urging me to make my choice. I felt a deep sense of dread, but also something else. Curiosity. The need to know what was behind this, what was behind the game I had been forced into. The feeling was overwhelming, but not in a way that paralyzed me. It was the kind of pull you feel when you're standing at the edge of something big, something life-changing. I took a breath and lifted the cloth. At first, I couldn't make sense of what I saw. It wasn't an object, not like I expected. It was a mirror. The frame was ornate, carved with the same symbols that adorned the room, but the surface itself was flawless, shining with a light that seemed to come from within. The moment I looked into it, everything around me faded. The room, the whispers, the shadows, they all melted away, leaving only the reflection of myself. I blinked, confused. Why was I seeing myself? This wasn't just any reflection. It was me, but not quite. The version of me in the mirror looked stronger, more confident. I could see something in my eyes that had been missing for so long: hope. The whispers faded, replaced by a calm, peaceful silence. I could feel warmth slowly creeping in, as if the weight that had pressed down on me for so long was finally lifting. The mirror was showing me something important, something that I had forgotten, something that had always been within me. The voice returned, this time gentle, soothing. "You've chosen," it said. "You found what you needed. The game is over. The path forward is yours." I couldn't explain what I was feeling, but I knew one thing. I wasn't afraid anymore. The fear, the dread, the uncertainty, all of it had been replaced by something more powerful. The understanding that I had control. I had made it this far, not by following the rules, but by finding my own way. The mirror began to glow brighter, and the room around me started to change. The walls, the stone, the oppressive shadows, everything was fading, replaced by warmth, light, and openness. I felt myself being pulled, but this time, it wasn't to a darker place. It was to freedom. I stepped away from the mirror, and the pedestal, the room, everything dissolved into light. I found myself standing in a meadow, the sun shining above me. The air was fresh, and I could hear birds singing in the distance. The world around me felt real again, peaceful, normal. I looked around, taking in the beauty of the place. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt at peace. And then, I realized, the game wasn't about finding a way out. It was about finding myself. About realizing that, despite everything that had happened, I was strong enough to face it all. I had chosen my path. And now, for the first time in my life, I was free.